With so many excellent budget divers being offered for far less money these days, does the Seiko Turtle still matter? Let's find out.
You know what you're gonna be? Blasted.
Hello and welcome back to Automatic Reviews. I'm Mark. Before I get to the review of the excellent Seiko King Turtle SPRF77, I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you're new to the channel, I'd like to welcome you. My goal is always to review the best watches at all price ranges, and if that sounds good to you, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe. Before we continue, I want to mention that while this is a review of a limited edition Manta King Turtle, the vast majority of what I will say will also apply to all other King Turtle variants. Another thing I want to mention before we continue is that while this video wasn't sponsored, even if it was, I will always tell you what I really think. Now let's take a look at this watch. Just a quick look at the unboxing. There's an outer sleeve, an inner box with a pillow, a manual, and a warranty card. The international warranty is 1 year, but when purchased from an AD in Canada, you have a 3-year warranty. I assume this varies from region to region. The stainless steel cushion case features a mix of brushing and polishing, and has lug holes for easy strap changes. The case is 45mm across with a thickness of 13.2mm. The lug to lug is 47.7mm, and the lug width is 22mm. It has a deep stamped screw-down caseback featuring the Seiko Wave and special edition etching. The iconic 4 o'clock crown is also screw-down, but sadly is unsigned. The movement is the 4R36, which is the branded version of Seiko's own in-house caliber, often sold under the very familiar generic name of NH35. It beats away at 21,600 beats per hour and has a power reserve of 42 hours. The dial has a brushstroke texture, featuring a mix of incredibly rich yet tastefully muted shades of blue. They come together to create an oceanic view, revealing the passing silhouettes of 3 manta rays. The printing on the dial and rehaut is neatly applied. The indices are polished, and a mixture of angled batons and circle markers. The only exception being a tiny baton marker, wedged in next to the unframed and non-color matched day-date window. The hour hand is a broadsword shape, and the minutes hand is an arrow. Both feature syringe tips. The seconds hand is a needle shape, with a lume pip counterbalance. Speaking of lume, all the hands and indices are loaded up with a generous amount of lume bright. Here's a quick lume shot. The crystal here is sapphire this time, being a King Turtle, and by that same token, has an extremely controversial appendage attached to it. The dreaded magnifying Cyclops. Underneath the crystal, there is an air coating applied. Water resistance is 200 meters. Surrounding the crystal is a mostly unlumed unidirectional dive bezel. Providing grip is a chunky square knurling pattern. The bezel features a kingly ceramic insert, and a single lume pip, which admittedly looks a little wilted under a macro lens. I'm sad now. The strap is a lovely blue branded silicone model with brushed and polished signed stainless steel hardware. Here it is on my flat profile 7-inch wrist. On this silicone strap, it weighs in at 128 grams. The price when I got it was $742 Canadian dollars from a local shop. That translates to about $518 US dollars. Look around though, deals on Seikos aren't rare. You can find a King Seiko for less. This is a King Turtle. What that translates to is this watch being equipped with features that come standard on even the most inexpensive AliExpress watches at this point. Namely a sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel. Don't get me wrong, I love these features, and I even think the King moniker is kind of fun. That being said, I just don't think it makes sense to produce turtles without these features for the kind of money they sell them for. Having a tiered quality level structure is a low for me. Even though it's kind of fun, it's weird. I love owning the King, but I also sort of think it shouldn't have to exist, if that makes any sense. The Cyclops. What can I say? The British call this sort of thing a Marmite feature because, just like edible yeast paste, you either love it or hate it. I wanted the King Turtle the second I saw one. That said, the Cyclops put me off enough to make me hesitate. I tried one on and I just couldn't pull the trigger. Then I saw this one in the store and I fell in love with the dial and decided to take a risk that the Cyclops would grow on me. You know what? It totally did. I really like it. I have plenty of watches without Cyclops. Why not have a few with one? It magnifies the day and date nicely and really doesn't bring any negatives except for requiring you to take a little extra care when cleaning off the crystal because lint does tend to gather around along the edges, leaving little kind of pieces of dust. Still, for some this will be a distinct negative feature, so let's call it a mid. Let's be clear, the movement in this watch is absolutely fine and nothing to sneeze at. It's the 4R36, also known as the NH35. So why is it a mid? Well, let me explain. I recently bought an entire watch for around 70 Canadian dollars that had this exact same movement in it. And guess what? It also had a sapphire crystal. So while I actually have a fondness for the NH35, and we'll talk about that a bit more later, I have to ask the question, is this movement fit for a king? It may have budget watch legendary status, but this movement might just fall short of being royalty. They could have inched us up the Seiko movement ladder a rung or two for this price. The metal keeper on the strap looks premium, but I find the strap slips out more easily than with other styles of keepers. Also of note, the buckle on this strap is chunky and oversized, which might be hit or miss for some. I think it suits the watch, but I could see some people wishing the hardware on this watch was just a little more subdued and practical. Guys, I'm a sucker for a special edition. Just look at that etching. I'm in a very special limited exclusive club with an undetermined number of other people. Possibly literally tens of thousands of them. Yes, it's meaningless. Yes, it's dumb. And yes, sign me up. I love a special edition, especially one this nice. The 4R36 or NH35 isn't a world beater for accuracy, and I questioned its royal credentials. But you can't deny what a reliable and problem-free movement it is. Also, I really love setting and winding NH35s. The crown action is just amazing and light and pleasant feeling. I always enjoy any watch that I get that has an NH35 movement, and this one's no exception. Guys, call me Neo because I am the chosen one. This is the first Seiko I've ever owned that had a centered bezel. Sure, I'm a trooper about this watch's crooked bezel brethren, and I still manage to enjoy those watches, but wow. When you get one like this, it adds so much to the experience, and it sounds crazy to be this excited about having a watch with a centered bezel, but if you know Seiko, you get it, so just congratulate me in the comments. This is really hard to illustrate even with the macro lens, but the dive bezel numerals are etched in and then painted, and it's such a clean job. They look completely flush with the bezel, but if you run your finger along them, you can feel the numbers are actually indented. And it's just really well done. It's perfectly executed. If you know me, you know I usually don't love dates on watches, and I'm a huge advocate for no-date versions. You know what? When you add the day in there too, it somehow takes things up a notch. This is a fun feature. I'd still almost always opt for no date, but I'm enjoying this little wrist calendar. I pan the King elements for being sold at premium pricing, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also say it's really cool owning a Seiko with a sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel. So long live the King, I suppose. The dark dial is really classy. You hear ocean scene and you might expect something over the top, but those silhouettes create a very classy scene. This is one of the nicest dials on any watch I own. The fact that it's a nature scene at all can go unnoticed if you aren't specifically looking for it. That was a very smart choice. Seiko lume is almost always stellar, particularly on their divers. This watch is no exception. I'm not as hardcore for lume as some, but I have to admit when it's bright and really punchy, it's very satisfying and not to mention useful. Cushion cases like this, which blur the lines between case and lugs, pull off this amazing magic trick of being chunky and oversized at the same time as being super wearable for many, if not most, wrist sizes. Yes, the case is 45mm across, but the lug-to-lug is under 48mm. My Hamilton Khaki has a case that's 7mm smaller and has extremely similar lug-to-lug measurements. This is case design wizardry that brings some playful chunkiness to the masses, and it's a high. With the exception of that lume pip, the macros are just stellar for this price point. Seiko gets flack for their rising prices, but this watch comes in cheaper than entry-level Swiss watches, and we can compare movements, sure, but The macros tell another story. This watch is made with more care than your average entry-level Swiss, no question. What is special? It's a little different for all of us. But there is this intangible loveliness to some watches that just make them feel special. This watch oozes that. With so many affordable and great watches outspecking Seiko at every turn, it's easy to forget that when Seiko turns it up and offers us what we're looking for, we aren't disappointed. This watch brings it. So, I asked at the beginning if the Seiko Turtle still mattered. The reason why I asked this is because with a market so crowded with so many great watches for much better prices, I can't help but sometimes wonder if Seiko's best days are behind it. But when I get a watch like this in my hands, I can say conclusively that yes, Seiko definitely still matters. I think when Seiko delivers quality like this and doesn't completely price themselves out of the game, they're still a brand that will have my attention for the foreseeable future. This is a fantastic watch, and I do think it's worth the asking price. But what about you? What do you think of the Seiko King Turtle? Do you have one? Do you want one? Are you a fan of Seiko? If not, what would you recommend instead? I want to hear about it, guys. Okay, that's all. That's it. We're done here today. We've come to the end. Please do check the description for any relevant links. And, I just want to remind you guys that I'm always trying to make this channel better. And when you subscribe, it really helps with that process. So please do consider giving me a subscribe because it will help. All right, till next time. Bye-bye.